My name is Shayla Janelle Hill, and I am the creator of Slave for a Change. This is a movement that promotes uplifting your voices using the vehicle of fashion. I am also the creator and executive producer of a documentary entitled Fashion Week. This is a film that captures the journey of Slave for a Change, but also brings racism and fashion to the forefront. Before I can begin to express why I created Slave for a Change, what it means to me, and what I wish for you to take away from it, it's important that I start from the beginning and express to you that I truly grew up believing I lived in a post-racial society. As a young child, I had a very limited perspective of what racism was. I thought it was as simple as this person doesn't like this person because of the color of their skin. And growing up in Cypress, Texas, a predominantly white suburban community on the outskirts of Houston, it gave me access to people of many races and ethnicities, and that alone was evidence enough to believe that racism was a thing of the past. This is an idea that followed me well into adulthood, an ideal that was further solidified and magnified November 4th, 2008, the election of President Barack Obama, our first African-American president. I thought to myself, Black people, we have made it, we have arrived. Before Barack Obama, the idea of a Black president was something that was only brought up in jest. But now it was a reality that actually inspired me to make a firm decision in my own life. After graduating from Prairie View A&M University, I decided instead of getting a real job, I would try to make it in fashion. While I had no clue what making it meant, I was determined. Fashion had always been a big part of my life. Whether I was at the Gucci store or the Goodwill, I was always inspired. I felt that it was a gift that was handed down from my grandmother to my mother to me. My first order of business when making it in fashion was to create a style blog. Now, the most important thing about creating a blog is to come up with the best name possible because your name is your brand and your brand speaks before you say a word. Now, it's important for me to note that although I still believed I lived in this post-racial society, it didn't leave me exempt from the effects of institutionalized racism. That's the invisible line of racism that shows up in your media, politics, right down to the toys that you play with. As a little Black girl, I was groomed to feel inadequate. So inherently, I had this notion that in order for me to make it in fashion, I needed to detach myself from my community. To be frank, I felt like I needed to create a name that a white person can look at and say, this Black girl is different. This Black girl is smart. So November 17th, 2009, Shayla Barbie was created. And while I laugh at this name now, at the time it made perfect sense to me because who couldn't relate to Barbie? She was as American as apple pie. As I embarked on this journey of a fashion blogger, I began diligently doing my research, reading every fashion blog, magazine, book, watching every documentary, even attending Fashion Week regularly. Something strange began to happen. Although I had my few heroes in fashion, such as Anna Wintour and June Ambrose, I began to feel like I didn't belong in this industry, although it was my passion. I quite literally could not see myself in it. So depression sank in, and after 2 short years, Shayla Barbie began to fizzle out. Not yet ready to give up on myself, I decided to reinvent myself. At the top of 2012, I created Random and Chic. Random and Chic was not only a style blog, but I also turned it into an online vintage store as well. And as I headed down this journey of entrepreneurship, something happened that changed the course of my life forever. Something that changed my thought process forever. February 26, 2012, Trayvon Martin.
I don't know why I think they're yelling help, but I don't know. It's something look hurt. Does he look hurt? I can't see him. I don't want to go up there. I don't know what's going on. So, don't send me.
Trayvon Martin was the first time I mourned the death of someone who was not a friend or a family member. It was the first time I cried myself to sleep over a stranger. The death of Trayvon Martin saddened me. The verdict of George Zimmerman infuriated me, but the reaction on social media awakened me. You see, these injustices and police brutality has always been around, but social media shed a different light. And it also shed a different light on these reactions. Those same friends that enabled me to believe I lived in a post-racial society were celebrating the verdict of George Zimmerman. Those reactions woke me up. And the thing about being woke is that you cannot return back to sleep. Your life changes forever. The way you see things, the way you think about things changes. And for the first time, there was friction between who I was as a black woman and what I wanted from the fashion industry. Suddenly, I began asking questions that I didn't ask before, like, why aren't there any black models? Why aren't there any black fashion designers? Why aren't there any black fashion editors? But before I can fully wrap my brain around this, 2014 alone, Eric Garner, Mike Brown, Tamir Rice. By the end of 2014, I was numb and desensitized to the killings of unarmed black men. I made a conscious decision to check out the next time this happened because at this point, I could only anticipate it. And while this worked out for me for a while, everything changed for me. July 13th, 2015, Sandra Bland.
Get out of the car.
Don't touch me. I'm not under arrest. You don't have the right to say
You are under arrest.
I'm under arrest for what?
25.
For what?
7 County FM 1098. Just
For what?
290, send me to the unit. Get out of the car. Get out of the car now.
Why am I being apprehended? You're trying to get me into
I said get out of the car.
Why am I being apprehended? You're
I'm
going to
giving
open
you
my
all
car
order.
door.
I'm going to drag you out of here.
So you're going to drag me out my car.
Get out of the car.
And then you
I will light you up. Get out.
Wow.
Now.
You see, Sandra Bland was different because at this point, it was only unarmed black men that were being killed and gunned down. She was a black woman. And not only that, but Sandra Bland graduated from Prairie View A&M University around the same time I graduated. Sandra Bland was close to the same age as me. Sandra Bland shared friends with me. Sandra Bland was me. And so if the death of Trayvon Martin woke me up, Sandra Bland's death made me stand up. And it was then the ideal of Slave for a Change began to formulate. At its most simple level, I just wanted to show up to Fashion Week with a shirt that said her name on it. The reason I wanted to take this to Fashion Week, I thought it would be a great time to capitalize on the press that's always harping outside of the Fashion Week building. There's just as much commotion happening on the outside as there is on the inside, and it's a great time to capture press from all around the world. And I just thought if I can just get one picture taken and it's spread much further than where I can take it, my job was done. But Sandra Bland died in July. Fashion Week was in September. By the end of August, nobody was talking about it anymore. It was enough silence to allow fear to creep in, so I decided to lay that idea to rest, regrettably. And things seemed to be going well, and by well, I mean no unarmed black men or women were gunned down by the police. That was until July 5th, 2016, Alton Sterling. You see, with Alton Sterling, it was different because I told myself I was going to feel this pain. I was going to mourn his loss the same way I did Trayvon. And before I can fully mourn and grasp what happened, July 6, 2016, Philando Castile was gunned down in his seatbelt with his fiancée in the passenger seat and a child in the back. If Philando couldn't make it out alive, we didn't stand a chance. And you have to understand, as an African American, at this point, we knew there would be no justice served. So if Trayvon woke me up and Sandra made me stand up, Alton and Philando made me move forward. And the ideal of Slave for a Change reemerged, but this time the vision was bigger. I thought it wasn't enough to go with myself, so I enlisted 3 others. Drawing inspiration from the fashion industry, I decided to build a collection of looks, hand painting strong messages on the back of each, dissecting them into 3. The first look was chic, it was sleek, it was all black. The jacket said, "Never forget." Much like September 11th, the death of these victims, I will never forget. Second look was all denim, with the first jacket reading, "Hashtags are the new black." Second jacket reading, "Sandra Bland." Third reading, "Soul ain't dead." Fourth reading, "Racism is out of style." Our third look was all pink. Pink was feminine, pink was girly. Our looks were bold. Nobody ever saw us coming. And it was this look that caused a media frenzy. It was this look that enabled us to go viral. By the end of September 13th, 2016, we were all over the internet. My inbox was flooded with emails of people telling me they were inspired by my movement. I had different publications reaching out to me from yahoo.com all the way from a radio station in Brazil. Before I can reach over and pat myself on the back, September 16th, 2016, Terrence Crutcher was shot and killed. September 20th, 2016, Keith Lamont Scott was killed. It was these deaths that the real mission of Slave for a Change came about. I decided that I had to continue to utilize my platform and my gift to allow their names to continue to echo for an eternity. Not just to remember them, but to prevent more. Since making my mark during Fashion Week, I have continued to do so, taking it as far as Superior Fashion Week, continuing to spread my message through my documentary, followed by necessary panel discussions. The most frequently asked question is, how do I slave for a change? It's simple. You keep the conversation going and you do it unapologetically. You have to understand that our fractured and unfair justice system monopolizes off of our short attention span. Also, it's about accountability. For me, I have to hold the fashion industry accountable. No matter how much I love designers or designer shoes, I have to be able to look them in the face and say, this is a racist institute built off of white supremacy, and it was never meant to represent people of color equally. But at this point, I demand it because it's a matter of life and death. So if I ask you to take away anything, is to leave out of here and continue your conversation. Continue allowing these names to echo until we see change, because at this point, justice has not been served. And I ask that you do so unapologetically. Thank you.